Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking some time today to listen to my presentation. My name is Andrew Dopke, and this is my final project for Stats 5030, Professor Shinki. Today I'll be presenting on my regression model for the National Hockey League Vezina Award. So to start, just a brief agenda for my presentation. I'm going to begin with just a simple introduction. Then I will go into data description of the data that I used to develop my model. Next, I will dissect some of the methodologies used in constructing my model and determining which model was best. And then finally, I'll move into my results, talk about how accurate is my model in comparison to what the actual Vezina results were. And then finishing up with a summary, what are the implications of the model and what might this mean for future statistical models in relation to the Vezina Trophy. So starting off with an introduction, just some background information. The Vezina Award is given out each season to the best goaltender in the National Hockey League. So how the voting works for this trophy is all general managers in each 31 National Hockey League team receives three choices, so three goalies. Their first choice gets 5 votes, the second choice gets 3 votes, and then their third choice gets 1 vote. So the goalie with the most total votes wins the award at the end of the season. Pretty easy, right? So what is the goal or what is the purpose of this project? Well, the goal is to identify what are the significant variables that affect the outcome for the voting of the award. There are traditional statistics such as save percentage, goals against, which I'll get into. However, what makes this project unique is I am introducing a new variable called East Coast bias, which attempts to quantify whether or not there is some bias on voters. When a goalie plays in the East Coast, are they more likely to get votes than a goalie who plays in the West Coast? So after this, I will develop several models that can be used to predict the placement of a goalie for the Vezina Trophy Award. Then I will compare the models by means of statistical analysis to try to see which model performs the best. And then at the end, I will run the best model for the 2018-2019 season and see how well it can predict the placement of the Vezina Trophy winner. So to start, just some data description on the voting and how it works. So the voting data that I extracted was from seasons 1981 all the way up to 2016 from the link as shown on the screen. However, I did exclude data from the years 2004 and 2012 due to shortened lockout seasons. A lockout season is just when the players and managers cannot come to terms on financial agreements. Therefore, the season gets either shortened or canceled altogether. Therefore, I did not include those 2 years in my data. But as you can see, in just in this sample photo down below, we have the season, which goalies were the top percentage of vote getters, their points, first, second, total, third votes, and then some statistics on the right, which we'll get into, such as wins, losses, goals against, save percentage, shutouts. Okay, next talking about our main response variable, which is share. So share is just the percentage of votes that the goalie got for the year. So as you can see in the diagram on the left, the plot for share is heavily skewed to the right, and this actually makes sense because only a few of the goalies are receiving a large percentage of the votes. Now, as we have learned with right-skewed data, we need to transform this using, oftentimes by using a logarithmic function. So after taking log of the share data, the diagram on the right illustrates much more normality. Although it is not perfect, it is workable. Next, just defining variables for our data description. As I said before, share is just the proportion of Vezina votes, which is our response variable. Next, getting into all of our explanatory variables, we have goals against average, which is GAA, save percentage, SV percent, SO or SHO, shutouts, and then WL, wins and losses, season, just the season the goalie played in, and then the new variable East, which is whether or not they play in the Eastern Conference. So someone who doesn't play hockey might be wondering how might these variables affect the Vezina votes. Well, goals against, let's just take a look at some of them. Goals against average, that's on average how many goals does a goalie let in per game. So the lower number is going to be better. So if a goalie lets on average 1 goal a game. That's going to be a lot more beneficial to a team than having a goals against average of 3 per game. Likewise, for save percentage, a higher save percentage will be better. So, for example, if a goalie saves 900 out of 1,000 shots for a year, that's a 90 save percentage. However, a goalie who saves 950 out of 1,000 is going to be at a 95% save percentage. So, higher save percentage, better goalie, more likely to get more votes. As you can see, same thing with shutouts. That's the games where a goalie does not allow a goal. So the more shutouts, the better. The more wins, the better. The less losses would be better, right? And then this East Coast variable, which we'll be investigating, is whether or not there's bias towards goalies who play on the East Coast in voting for the Vezina Trophy. So, creating this new East variable, the what's the word for it? The driving factor behind this is that many people believe voting is biased towards East Coast players. So instead of just speculating on this, I added my own variable called East to see if it actually affects Vezina voting results. So normally how we test to see if a variable is significant is by using a t-test, but that would be assuming that data is perfectly normally distributed. Although after taking natural logs, as shown before, the data was closer to normal, it is not perfectly normally distributed. Therefore, we're going to be using the Wilcox test, which is non-parametric by nature. So recall that in any test, a p-value less than 0.05 means that this variable is going to be a significant predictor for our response variable. As you can see, after running the Wilcox test, we have a p-value of 0.01392, which means that indeed playing in the East Coast is a significant variable in determining our response, which is Vezina votes. So next, talking about methodologies. So how did I construct these models? Well, I developed 3 different models that can be used to predict the Vezina Trophy Award winner. All 3 models utilize multiple linear regression in R by means of using the LM function, which, as we know, just aims to minimize the ordinary least squares estimates, right? So model 1 is the custom model that I developed myself. So I just selected 5 variables that I thought were the most significant. And then models 2 and 3 are going to be using stepwise selection, which we learned about. So just as a refresher for model 2, backwards selection model, that starts with assuming all predictors are significant and then proceeds to reduce variables until the best model is found. On the other hand, forward selection model does the other by starting with 0 predictors and then adds variables until the best model is found. So I had 3 different models here I'm going to be performing statistical analysis on to see which model performs the best. So continuing with the model construction, which variables did I use for each model? So for the custom model, as I said before, I just selected these myself. So I have wins, save percent, goals against, shutouts, and East. For the backward model, which was generated as having wins, losses, save percent, shutouts, and season. And then finally, for the forward model, we have wins, season, save percent, shutouts, East, and losses. So as you can see, models 1 and 2 each have 5 variables, and model 3 has 6 variables. One thing to note is all 3 models contain the factors of wins, save percent, and shutouts. This illustrates that these 3 variables are likely going to be very significant in predicting the Vezina winner. Moving on, what are the results? So how are we going to select the best model? Well, there are a multitude of ways that we can go about selecting the best model. 2 of the most common are looking at adjusted R squared and AIC. Recall that the higher the adjusted R squared, the better the model. On the other hand, the lower the AIC, the better the model. Thus, as we can see, we're going to select the forward model since it has the highest adjusted R squared and the lowest AIC. Also note, the hand-picked model that I did myself performs the worst, so that's something to note, but I guess I'm not very good at picking. Moving on with the forward model, next we're going to test it for any multicollinearity. Recall that multicollinearity is the dependence of one term on another within a model. So how we test for multicollinearity is we use variance inflation factor. So a variance inflation factor is simply just a tool to test for dependence of terms. So if this number is above 5, this implies high correlation between the terms. So as we can see, none of the terms have a variance inflation factor above 5, meaning that the terms are not significantly correlated. Thus, this model does not show any signs of multicollinearity, and it's going to be good to go to try to predict the Vezina winner. So, getting to the meat and potatoes of the results, as stated before, I took all my data in developing my model from the 1981 to 2016 season. So now I'm going to try to apply that model to the 2017 season and see how well it can predict the Vezina Trophy winner. As you can see in the first photo up top, that is my predictions based on my forward model for the top 5 placement for Vezina Trophy vote getters. So as you can see, my model predicted Pekka Rinne would win, which is exactly what the actual results were. My model predicted Hellebuck would be second. That's correct. Third, Vasilevsky, correct. Fourth, Anderson, correct. And I'm wrong on number 5, which is Marc-Andre Fleury. So as you can see, my forward model correctly predicted the top 4 goalies for the Vezina Trophy, which I thought was pretty cool. So, in summary, the model seems to be accurate up to the 5th place. The most significant variables, which was shown by being included in all the models, was save percentage, wins, and shutouts. Additionally, East Coast is a significant variable, which exposes voter bias, as shown by the Wilcox test and by the forward model. Now, one might wonder what future research could be done. Well, I think if anything, this presentation showed that there is voter bias that can be exposed through statistical analysis. So some future research may look into exposing other voter bias, such as showing favoritism towards an original 6 team or towards any team in particular. Overall, this model was very successful, and thank you for taking some time to listen to my presentation today. Have a nice day.